there's a guy sitting at a table next to her, and he's supposed to be a psychic. And once I sit down, this guy is spot on telling me things that I know for a fact no one would know. And at the end of that, he says, one of your kids and you guys are open channels. Once you start opening these doors, you start having experiences. I channeled, and the entity that spoke to me told me that I was Isis incarnate. One night in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was a full-on apparition of Osiris in my room with the Egyptian headdress in the corner. Once I started doing this and opening myself up, it's like you're opening levels of the demonic realm. And now what was happening is I was having demons just entering in and out of my mind, to the point I'm at work and I could hear non-stop chatter. My name is Karla, and this is my testimony. So I grew up in a two-parent household. I lived in an amazing neighborhood, and to the outside, people looking in, it looked like an amazing, perfect family. But in reality, I was raised in organized religion. And so it was super, super strict. Out of respect, because my family is still in it, I don't really say the name, but there's only so many that are cult-like, that are very big and still here today. We were allowed to go to school, but we couldn't do school functions. You can't play sports. We weren't allowed to go to like any type of dances or anything like that, because in this religion, you are not to mix with what they call the world. So you can be nice to people, and like I was able to play like with my neighbors, but technically you're kind of not to really make friends with them because they're considered people of the world. And even growing up in this religion, they allow you to listen, which I think is so weird now that I'm a Christian. They allow you to listen to secular music, but you're not allowed to listen to gospel or any type of Christian music. And it goes back to the belief system that they believe in God the Father, but they do not believe Jesus is God. They do not believe in the Trinity, and they also do not believe that the Holy Spirit is an actual person and it's a he. They believe more like it's a force from God the Father, or like something that he has that he uses. But they do not believe in the Trinity. They also don't believe in hell. So I grew up thinking that there was no hell, which is extremely dangerous to grow up in, because when I decided that I didn't want to be part of um, this religious organization, as a teenager, I didn't think of any repercussions because there was no hell. So it didn't really matter. I wasn't going to make it into their new order or new system where they were going to go. But I thought to myself, what does it matter? I'm going to be dead. How would I know? On the opposite side of my family, besides organized religion, the rest of my family was not any religion. So like you had either this religion, which was on both sides, my mother and my father's side, or people were just what they call part of the world. But then also on my mother's side, I had a great grandmother who was a witch. And so I grew up in generational witchcraft. It wasn't until I became a Christian and I asked the guidance of the Holy Spirit what type of witchcraft she was practicing that he revealed to me voodoo. So growing up in this organized religion, I did not do anything that had to do with witchcraft as a child or anything like that. My grandmother never taught me anything, but I just remember having to be around her, and I would go and sit with her at my aunt's house, and I still to this day believe she was doing something to me, like imparting something. I don't know, but I just remember having to go there, and she would just stare me down, and she would make this, like she would be eating and she would make this, I just remember this till now as a grown adult, this clicking sound, and it was almost like trance like. You would just listen to the clicks to where you would just be kind of like zoned out. So the one time I do remember something crazy happening with her was I was like about 8 years old, and my mom came and told me that we had to go to my aunt's house. And so when we got there, I just remember my mom telling me, like, you need to sit in the kitchen and don't move. Of course I moved because I'm 8. So I was like running all the way and through the house and like getting into stuff. And my mom and my aunt disappeared. And then all of a sudden I heard them talking kind of quietly in the hallway, like after an hour or maybe even an hour and a half to 2 hours. I hear them talking. So I'm just kind of like, oh no, they're gonna find me. So I go running back, and now I'm kind of eavesdropping, but I can't make out what they're saying. Well, it wasn't until I was older, like a teenager, that my mom told me the story and the reason why we really went over there. It was because my aunt had went in to check on her mother, which was my great grandmother, and she was levitating off the bed and she couldn't get her down. And so my mom and her took their Bibles in and started praying, and finally my great grandmother went back on the bed. Later on, after that, I found out my mom told me another story that had to do with her and my sister, who's older than me. When my sister was a baby, they went to her house, and like my mom had a crazy experience where she never returned to my great grandmother's house ever again. So I just knew that witchcraft was in my family, but I did not even think that I didn't know that it would affect me. I didn't learn any of this until after I was saved. And so I just went through life, being a kid. And because growing up in this strict organized religion, like there's only two things that happen when you're in a cult like religion. You either stick with it and so you just keep replicating, what they want you to do, or you break free. But the problem is when you break free from organized religion, not necessarily are you going to go and find Jesus. A lot of times what happens is you break free and you want to go and do whatever it is they told you couldn't do. And so that's pretty much what happened. And as at the age of 14, I went through a very traumatic experience where I was um, assaulted as a teenager. That also opened up a door to a lot of different issues that started to manifest as I got into adulthood. So, like, just from the trauma, it opened up not being able to trust, the opposite sex, thinking that men were no good, being hurt by one. And it wasn't even an older person, it was somebody my age. It really took an effect on me. And so I got to the point of, instead of letting someone hurt me, I'm going to make sure that I hurt you first. I was very just kind of, I would say, promiscuous. I had a thing with like not forgiving people, holding grudges. I was angry, not like to the extent of violent outbursts, but like if you did something to me, then I was coming for you. And so this, not to mention not dealing with the assault, not getting any type of counseling, no therapy. My parents also didn't know. I did not tell my parents until I was like 30 years old. So I literally harbored this assault and just like pushed it down inside of me. And so as I kept going into, being a teenager and stuff like that, I wasn't really into like drinking or partying. It wasn't until I got closer to being of that age 21 that you can do those type of things that I was more into that. So that wasn't really it. It was more just the promiscuity and being rebellious. That is number one. I think the spirit that entered into me was the spirit of rebellion. I rebelled against everything and everyone. It didn't matter what it was. Like whether somebody was trying to tell me something like, the sky is blue, I'm rebelling and saying, no, no, that's not what I see. That was really what entered into me and just kind of took over. And so my mom and my dad were trying to raise me. But by this time I refused to go to church with them. So I was done with that part. But then I just started rebelling and like I would do whatever I wanted. I would come home if I wanted to. Sometimes I wouldn't come home. And so my mom and parents tried a lot of different things, but the one thing that they didn't realize was that I was, you know, dealing with this trauma that they had no idea about. And so it was coming out of me in just crazy ways of rebelling, ripping and running the streets and doing whatever I wanted. And so when I got into being a teenager, into like the age of 17, 18, I met my husband, who I'm married to now, but that's a whole nother story because we actually were married, got divorced, and then we got remarried. So, but at the time I met him, I was a teenager, and then we ended up being together. We ended up having two children, who are grown adults, and there was a lot of hurt and things that was done, and so it ended up we got a divorce. But during that time was when I had the first, I would say, encounter with opening myself up to witchcraft. As a child, I had really interesting abilities to do things that most people don't. So in the new age, they would call it like clairaudience, clairvoyant, that type of stuff. But because I knew this isn't normal, I did not like, I didn't encourage it in myself and I didn't tell anybody. And so it kind of like lay dormant. Well, then, as a young adult, I was around like 21 when I was in college, and I was sitting at this table because I was waiting for another class to begin, and I was at a mall, and I was sitting there like studying and writing in my planner, and this woman walked by, and she did not really make eye contact, and she just slapped this card down and kept walking. And so I looked at the card and it said that she did some type of like healing or something like that. And I was just like, that's odd. And by the time I looked back at her, she was like completely gone. And so I ended up taking the card and going to class and stuff. And then I ended up calling her, and she told me to come to her house, and so I did. And when I came into her house, like there was nothing in there that said witch or anything, or like I practice, witchcraft or anything, except I will say she had this closet that the entire hall closet from top to bottom had shelves on it, and they were filled with white candles and they were burning. That's about the only thing that I saw that was like, other than that, her house looked like an ordinary house. And we sat and just kind of talked and had this whole conversation. And as we were done talking and getting towards the end, that's when she told me that, someone put a hex over your family. There's a curse over your family, which then triggered me to think back to my great grandmother. And I was like, oh, she did something to somebody and then they retaliated. So that's what sucked me in right then and there. So she told me, I can break this. I know how to do the cleansing and this and that. So she told me, of course it always comes with, and there's a fee. So she told me how much it was going to cost. I ended up paying it, and she gave me instructions, and she gave me these like bath salts. And she told me that I had to do this at a certain time on a certain day. It was like around the full moon, if I'm not mistaken. And I had to like take this cleansing bath and recite this incantation and stuff. And so I did it. And nothing happened, but I did do it. And after that, I called her and said, okay, I did it. And then she came with uh, oh, well, now there's something else. And so it was always like a ploy to get more money. Well, now we have to do this. Well, now we have to do that. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm just, like you said, you could fix this and you did not fix it. So now I'm done. So I just remember being like, I'm not doing it anymore. And what was crazy is I went back to her house to see her, and she was completely gone. Phone disconnected, vanished, nothing in the house. And I like looking at it now, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. But then I just kind of was like, oh, she was just trying to take my money and didn't think about it on a spiritual level, like what that could have been or what that meant. And so that was really like the first time I dabbled in anything that had to do with witchcraft. But then fast forward, when I at the age of 22, I went into a bookstore, of all places, Barnes and Nobles, And I am a very passionate reader. So I went in there. I wanted to get just books to read. As I'm in there, I go down this one aisle and I see they have a witchcraft aisle. And so I just happened to start like picking up the books and looking at them and stuff. And I found like a couple and I was like, oh, I'm going to buy these. So I bought them. And so I go home and now I have these witchcraft books in my house and I start going through them. And one of them was very, it had a lot of like things that you had to do. And there was like all this stuff you had to gather. And it was things that I had never heard of, that I had no idea what kind of store you would even find these. And mind you, this is back in like 2001, 2002. So the internet was not what it is today. And there was no like online shopping like there is today, where the accessibility to get like crazy ingredients is literally at your fingertips. So I didn't know like, about the witchcraft bodegas and stuff like that at the time. So I just kind of was like, this is ridiculous. So I moved on to the next book, and the next book was very simple. And the first thing that I saw was this like love spell thing. And it was very simple. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see if it works. Well, one thing that they don't tell you about witchcraft is that it's manipulation, and you're always manipulating something or someone. So when I did the love spell, I did it at the time I was already divorced. I did it on my current boyfriend, who had no clue that I did this. I never told him or anything, but I just wanted to see if it worked. Well, also what you don't understand about witchcraft is when you're casting spells and doing all of this, and especially when you're working with love spells and things like that, you are binding yourself to someone. And so, and you're manipulating their free will to choose you. You're literally binding yourself using demonic forces. And so, but of course, that's not what you think it is. And so I ended up doing this love spell. It did work. And the other problem with love spells is if you get tired of the person and you don't want them anymore, they're still bound to you, and you can't get rid of them that easy. Like, it's a process, because you have literally soul tied and bound yourself to this person, not just in the physical, you've done it in the spiritual. And so that was the first thing that I did, was that love spell. And from there, when I saw that it worked, then it just automatically, I was sucked in. And so that's when I started to get, so instead of like some people, you have to read and you have to be like somebody trains you or something. It was like I would get instant downloads, like, oh, if you do this and this and this is how, this trick, this magic, this is how you get this power. If you do this, if you pray to this, the gods and goddesses, if you do this spell at this time on this day, this is how you conjure up more power. If you do, it was always downloaded. It was never something that I went and searched for. I would just get it. And so that's how I learned like my specific type of witchcraft that I really got into was candle magic. And I'm not really going to describe everything that I did, but it's using candles. There's certain colors that you have to use. And then I got a download that using something of someone else's, if it was for someone else or if it was for me, like cutting my hair and using my hair, using my own blood to make it stronger. And really what that does is it doesn't make anything stronger. What you're doing is, when you use like your blood or your hair, or you're using even people who sage, what you're doing is you're conjuring the demon to come to you. Of course, that's not in the book that I had that said, oh, this is candle magic, and then I went from there. Or the other two spell books, they don't say like, oh, they just call it power. So it's like, this is how you get stronger, and you're able to do like more in-depth spells and things like that. So the other thing that I really want to talk about is, like, a lot of times, especially even when I was practicing, like, people will say, oh, I'm a good witch, I'm not a bad witch, I don't do black magic. And my answer to that is there is no good witch, because I was a good witch until you did something to wrong me. And then I went after you. And I didn't, where other people, might get in a fist fight or something like that. I would go after you through magic and spells. So when people tell me, oh, I was a good witch, I just am like, no, there's no good witch. There literally is just a witch. And no matter how nice you want to be, when once somebody does something to you, it's all over because it's too tempting. It's at the tip of your fingertips. Like, I can just get even by doing this to them. And it's so easy because you don't get caught. Nobody, like, if you don't tell anyone, nobody knows. And so for me, I was a closeted witch. I did not join a coven. I did not tell people that, oh, I do this. I was very like quiet about it, but people who were in my inner circle knew, because you can only hide it so much. But like my family didn't know. My mom and dad didn't know. But like my best friend we lived in a house together, she knew because she would see my altars. My kids growing up, it wasn't until later my daughter, who's an adult now, said like, oh, I knew you were into something because I remember coming across your candles and like that type of stuff. I did not leave altars up, but like when you need them, you have to put put the altar up, set it up and everything. And when you're working with candles, you have to let the candles actually burn on their own all the way down. So there's time periods where it's just burning all day, all night. So yes, if somebody was to see it, they're going to obviously figure it out. Like, something's going on. It's not a normal thing just to have like an altar set up with candles burning and stuff. It does look quite like what is happening. So I did this for a long time. Like, this was the main part of like the witchcraft that I was into, was like I would cast spells. And it wasn't so much that people asked me for it. I was really doing it like for myself. And then I would, obviously, if somebody did something to me, I was doing it that way. But it wasn't really like, I didn't have people coming to me asking me for spells, and I did not make it like a business or something. So then as I got older, like, I continued to practice witchcraft until I got well into my 30s. And the one thing too that I want to say about, like, when you're dabbling in witchcraft, when you are dabbling in any type of the occult, if you are dabbling in Satanism, it doesn't matter what it is. The one thing that people have to understand is this doesn't come free. Like, when you look at God, and like, God will give you gifts, He will give you grace, He gives you love, He gives you everything with no strings attached. When you are playing in Satan's world and you are playing with his stuff, he takes from you. So for every time he gives you something, whether he gives you money, well, then he's going to also give you an addiction. He might give you, power, and now you have a mental disorder. It's never going to be free. So with the practicing and with all of this that he was giving me, he was not only giving me, the ability for the spells to happen and for this to happen, he was also taking and sucking the life out of me. So with the witchcraft grew, like, and through wanting to party and everything else, when I got of age, became an addiction. And then it was just never being able to have like a normal relationship. Like, I was always just all over the place. Like, I couldn't settle. And it wasn't like people didn't want the relationship. It was like I would not do it. I was always just seeking the next best thing. I was never satisfied with just being like normal and just being like, you know what, I'm not gonna, everything's fine. It was always, what can I do more? What can I have better? What can I do? What can I do? And so that was always me. I was always seeking and wanting more of, no matter what it was. And so as I just kept practicing and stuff, I would just notice like the chaos that would happen around me. It didn't necessarily happen to me, but everything around me would be chaos. And it was because of what you're doing. Like, you are pulling in chaos. You are using dark forces in order for things to manipulate things And so through that, the dark forces are also manipulating the people around you. They're manipulating everything. That energy is now stuck to you because you welcomed it in. You opened up your body as a vessel to all of this. And so like my life just it just was like crazy. And through the process, like I ended up into my 30s, getting to the point where I just was like sick and tired of the drama, like in like relationship craziness and just all this stuff. And no matter like how like a relationship could start off great and then like give it some years and it's just like all chaos and turmoil and it always ended. And so I just got really tired of everything. And um by then I was using like alcohol to just deal with everything. Like just deal with everything. It was like, "Oh, I'm stressed. I need a drink. Oh, I'm this." And what's really sad about this is that um they do this like through media, like when you're watching TV shows and to like, watching movies. If you really, when your eyes start to open and you pay attention, they are actually programming you that this is normal. And I started like, it wasn't until I got free of it that I started to really see this like, wow, like every show they show you like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I need a drink. Oh, I want to go have fun. We need to go out so that we can drink. Oh, I'm going to dinner. I need to have a drink. And so this was being programmed, not to mention I was opening myself up to the demonic realm. And so it just came when I was dealing with like undealt with trauma, dealing with other trauma and everything else. It just piled on and I would just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna drink. And then I don't have to think about it. And so it got to the point where I got sick and tired of that. And at the time, I had met this one boyfriend who had his grandmother, who was his mother, well, who he called his mother, had she used to have abilities, and so he was very comfortable with it. And he would tell me like stories of how like she had intuition and she would predict things and stuff. And I was just like, okay. And so at this point was when I had gotten to the point where I was like, I want to better myself. I want to change my life. And so I had like started like, really watching, like not drinking a whole bunch and not doing this and not doing that. And I'd stopped smoking like cigarettes and all kinds of stuff. And then around this time, like, is when the new age got introduced to me. And it did not come under the new age like uh it wasn't presented to me in that way, and nobody presented it. I just have to say that. Like, it wasn't a person. It was just how the devil was smart enough. Like, Satan was super smart with me to do things in certain ways to where I would not catch on. And so it was presented to me in a self-help way, like, oh, practice gratitude, practice gratefulness. You can change your, who you are. You can dictate your surroundings and um, how you change yourself on the inside will come out on the outside, and other people will be able to see your light. And they do a lot of, there's light and there's dark and everything, but they don't tell you like their light is false and the dark is Satan. There's just, oh, there's evil, but they don't say there's demons. They just say, oh, there's evil or there's this. And so I really started kind of going down that path. And at the time, by the place that I worked, there was a crystal shop. And it was a gem shop, but like they were pretty new agey because they had like all kinds of little satchels with crystals to do this and crystals to do that. And of course, I went in there and I'm like, oh, crystals for protection and crystals for this. And I bought all these crystals and I really started going. I became a very fluent customer. I was going in there all the time and buying all these crystals. And eventually I had crystals all around the tops of my ceiling, over my doors, like when you walked into my house. I carried them in my purse. I would carry them on me. I had them at my desk at work, all over the place. And so that was the first part, the crystals. And then I had went to a store, and in the store, I believe it was a store, they had a little flyer, and it was like, oh, there's a metaphysical fair. And I had no idea what a metaphysical fair was. And it just said, come to this metaphysical fair at this date and this time. And the person that I was dating at the time was like, oh, yeah, let's go. I'll go with you. So we go, and it is full of people who are shamans, people who are psychic, people who read tarot, people who do this, people who do that. And you basically can just go and talk to these people and get your cards read, or, talk to a psychic. And what did I do? Just that. I went and like talked to this shaman who was like speaking stuff. And most of the people, I was like, you guys aren't that good. And they weren't really spot on, and I just was like, like, this isn't really like your gift type thing. And so I remember I went into this one part, and there was this girl who was doing tarot cards. And so I sat down, and she shoveled the thing and tried to read my cards, and I was like, in my mind, under my breath, I'm like, you suck. And she was like dead off and just wrong. And I was like, yeah, this is, and initially I'm getting ready to leave, because I'm like, these people don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, this is just fake. And that's when, of course, Satan is like, uh-oh, we're about to lose her. And so there's a guy sitting at a table next to her, and he's supposed to be a psychic. And so I go and sit down in front of him. And once I sit down, this guy is spot on telling me things that I know for a fact no one would know. And so as he goes through his, telling me all this stuff, and I'm just sitting there like, okay. And inside, I'm just like spazzing out, but like to him, I just look like normal. And I'm just like, okay, okay. And I'm just like in the inside, like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And at the end of that, he says, one of your kids and he goes, you guys are open channels. And I was like, what? And he's like, you're an open channel. And I said, what does that mean? And he goes, you are really sensitive to the spirit realm. And so you can easily develop these gifts. And he said, you need to go and study the gifts, which then sent me on a whole mission. So now I'm like, woo, I'm an open channel. And the and the funny thing is like Satan is really smart at like boosting your ego. So now, and he told me like, this is a special thing, like you are special. Oh, okay, that's all I need to know. I'm special now. And so like that just got me hook, line, and sinker. So now I'm off on this mission, like I'm special, I'm chosen. And I ended up like going home and like looking up, because he gave me some of them, like clairaudience, clairvoyant. There's all these different things. And later on, when I got saved, I realized that Satan just replicates what God has. So while God has gifts, now Satan has gifts. These are demonic. God's are from him. So I'm over, at home, I am now immersing myself in different books and all kinds of stuff. And there are so many different rabbit holes you can go down, and so many different paths in the new age. And that's the the dangerous part of the new age, is that there is a path for everyone. So whatever you believe, or whatever you want to believe in, whatever you're curious about, the new age has it all. So it just sucks people in, because no matter where you are at whatever stage, they have like, there's a part of the new age that you would be like, oh, I resonate with that. Oh, that, that's something that I believe. And so that's how that's why I feel like it's more dangerous to me than than like witchcraft and Satanism and things like that. I feel like new age is way more dangerous, just because like it can be like how it got me, under the guise of like self-help and wanting to change yourself. There's like, oh, if you believe in nature, it'll take you down that path where you'll be worshiping Mother Earth and everything else. Oh, not to mention, there's do you believe that, you have a higher power or a higher self? And then now you're over here worshiping yourself, thinking that yourself is telling you all this stuff, when really you're getting downloads from demons. And so it just goes on and on. And so for me, that was, I think, worse than the witchcraft for me was the new age, because I just fell into that hook, line, and sinker. And I just started practicing and opening up so many different things that it was ridiculous. Like I went down the path of like chakras and chakra balancing, and I started having visions, and I was into frequencies. So I would listen to frequencies to do different things. And I opened up my third eye, which was super dangerous. I ended up, uh, I started channeling. So channeling is basically like where you're getting downloads and an entity is speaking through you. Then I started automatic writing, which is like where the best way that I'll explain this, because this is like would make it easiest to understand, is like imagine your mind is like an elevator and you're in the elevator, and then you get to the floor and the doors open and you walk out, and the other thing walks in, and now it's using your mind. And when it's done, it leaves and you come back too. So what happens is when you look down at what you've written, you're like, what the heck is this? Because whatever has come into you has written the message. And so now you have to like ask, you know, it or whoever, and it depends on who's channeling. For me, I never really usually I would ask their names, but I did not have I wouldn't go as far as I like having like designated spirit guides. I was just talking to like whatever. And so there would be like and most of the messages were like, you know, stuff about, it could be about the, you know, hidden knowledge was a big one. And like, you know, encouraging you to go further and deeper into what you're practicing. And then also like things about like the galaxy and, you know, like the world and what they're trying to do. Sometimes it depends on what entities you're talking to, but they'll talk to you about like, you know, I'm from this planet, and I'm trying, you know, we're coming to help you, and that type of stuff. And so I was doing a lot of that. And so once you start opening these doors, you start having experiences. So like the first experience I ever had was I channeled, and the entity that spoke to me told me that I was Isis, the Egyptian goddess incarnate. And I ended up like having this really deep like need to go to study like Egyptology and all of that. And so I was like studying who Isis was and who Horus and Ra and all of this. And I ended up going and getting the Eye of Horus tattooed on me. And that was like the first thing that I did, which was very weird because I did have tattoos prior to that, but I never, ever, ever would tattoo like a picture. And so this is the only picture that I actually have. But so yeah, I had went and did that. One night in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was a full on apparition of Osiris in my room with like the Egyptian headdress in the corner. And I'm a very like scary person to an extent, but like I was like tripping because I was thinking like, am I imagining this? Am I even awake? But I was wide awake. After that happened, I started listening to like frequencies at night, and I put on this one that was about learning how to leave your body and to be able to astral travel. And so basically an astral projection. So basically I ended up astral projecting out of my body one night, and when I looked, I was out of my body. I'm looking down and I can see someone sleeping next to my boyfriend in the bed, and I was like, who is this girl in my bed? And then there was a moment where I realized it was me. And the moment that I realized I was out of my body, I like slammed back into my body with such a force that I like flew up off the bed and was like sucking in air, like I was gasping for air. And then I immediately was like hitting him like, oh my gosh, I just astral projected. And he's like, what? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm trying to tell him because I'm like freaking out. Well, it kind of scared me, so I never really attempted to do that again. But I still was like channeling, I still was doing everything else. I was chakra balancing, I had started videos on social media teaching people how to eat for their chakras and all this different stuff. And then I ended up one of the things with one side of new age where they will be like, you know, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't do this, but then they will allow like and they say that, you know, using help you to like go into the spirit realm and stuff like that. And it's usually the people who are more going into the natural path of like, I'm going to be a vegan and I do yoga and all of that. And this video that I was watching, this guy was talking about you can take different stuff to go into the spirit realm. And there is this stuff. I'm not going to say what it's called, but you can get it at like smoke shops and it kind of mimics weed, but it's not. It's a completely different thing. I wanted to see into the spirit realm and I ended up buying it and I took it one time and that was it. And when I did, and I went smack into somewhere and I had earbuds in and I was playing frequencies. So I started to see these mandalas and they were colors that I'd never seen before and they were moving and they were alive. And I was like going all over this place. And when I decided that I was done and I wanted to come back, there was these little beings that were holding on, like I was in this capsule and they were like trying to tip it to keep me there. And I was fighting to come back. And when I finally came up off the couch, um, my boyfriend who I had told to watch me when I was doing this to make sure nothing bad happened, he said that when I came back, I wasn't even there. Like I was like still gone somewhere. Even though I had sat up, I kind of like moved off the couch. And he said it took 5 minutes and then all of a sudden I came back to normal. But like I ended up journaling what had happened and stuff, but I never did that one again either. I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm good. And so then I started having experiences like I started using because it was easier and like you can control it better. And so I just remember one day I was cleaning my house and I sat down and I smoked. And then I don't remember how long I was there for. It could have been minutes, it could have been hours, but I went into this like dark black void. And while I was in there, my grandmother appeared and I had this whole conversation with her. She had passed away years before. And we had this whole conversation. She was telling me like, "Oh, it's okay over here." And this is again one of the lies that, you know, the enemy tells you is that the same thing that the religion had told me, like there's no hell, there's no nothing, was the same thing that my grandmother was telling me, like she was out kicking it somewhere. And so I'm just talking to her and she's telling me, "Oh, go back and tell your mom it's not what she thinks and it's okay," and all of this. And during this time, I could like physically touch her. She could touch me. And so it wasn't until after I became a Christian that I realized who I was talking to was a familiar spirit that knew everything about my family. My grandma knew everything about, you know, her life and my life, to where he was able to just tell me and make me believe that, oh, I'm talking to my grandma. And that's the scary part, is like when people are going to mediums, when they're going to psychics, you are not talking to that person. What is happening is that every one of us has a familiar spirit that follows our generational bloodline. And the other person has the same thing. So when you're going to a psychic, it's your familiar spirit talking to their familiar spirit and feeding it information. And that familiar spirit is telling that person because they are demonically open to hear it. That's all it is. You are never speaking to the person that you're thinking you are, because it even tells you in the Bible that there's no ability to be able to contact someone once they are dead. So that was another, you know, lie from the pits of hell. Me having this whole conversation with my grandmother. I think it really was to try to like settle me into like, this is the right path. And so here I am. This is years of being in the new age and I'm just like full fledged into it. I am just going down all these paths. I end up becoming discovering Reiki healing, which is like energy healing. It is highly demonic. So one thing with Reiki is that there are sigils that are you use, and this is how you conjure up the power. The healing power is by using these sigils, and there's specific ones. And basically, you can either draw it on paper or you draw it into the palms of your hands. So you do these sigils, and then you literally, I would feel my hands and my whole body charged with like energy. And so why this is so demonic is because when you go to get imbued, is what they call it, which is basically when you go to get loaded up with a bunch of demons in your body, you go through these meditational exercises, and basically the person that I went to was like trained with the original person who like invented Reiki. And she was like a well-known Reiki master and all of this. And basically they conjure the spirit. They have names. They're like, they're foreign names. So it's not like, Satan, come in or something like that. They're very like intricate, names that you're like, oh, this is important. And they basically are conjuring these spirits into you. So I went and did that. I went through the first two processes, and it's Reiki, like to become a Reiki healer, it's expensive. And so then the next step is you go through Reiki healing 1 and 2 practitioner, and then the next step is a master. And I was on my way to becoming a Reiki master, and I was really into that, and I was still, doing the new age, and I'm just like deeply into all of this, and I'm still having crazy experiences. And then I decide that I wanted that I start reading about the Kundalini spirit. And I wasn't really big into yoga, but I started reading about this Kundalini and how it's like dormant in you and you can wake it up. And what they describe it as is like these two snakes that are dormant in the bottom of like your sacrum. And then basically what happens is as you wake them up, they intertwine like this up your spine, and then they come out of the top of your head. And when that happens, you have reached like this enlightenment. Because one thing about the new age is that you're always trying to reach this enlightenment. You're always trying to reach this knowledge. It's the same lie that, Satan's been telling us. And that is, if you get this knowledge, you're going to know everything, and you're going to know between, good and evil and everything else. And so it was that same lie, this is going to give you this knowledge. And so here I am, trying to get this knowledge. And I'm trying to, I'm going to become so knowledgeable, and I'm going to know all this stuff. And then they also get you with like you're living in 4D, and there's so many different extra dimensions, and you can get to these higher dimensions when you enlighten yourself. It always is enlightening to get everywhere. So you need to gather all this knowledge, and you have to practice all these things and do all these things and go through all these like rituals and everything else to get all this knowledge. And so I had started messing with the Kundalini stuff, and that right there was kind of the turning point. So once I started dabbling in this, I started having really bad issues. So I was at work, and once you start trying to open, like to get these snakes to go up your back, once I started doing this and opening myself up, and it's like you're opening levels of the demonic realm, and it's just like it's almost like you're opening up your body more, like to where they're able to come in. And now what was happening is I was having demons like just entering in and out of my mind, to the point I'm at work and I could hear. I have never have I ever had any type of like mental illness or anything like that. But at this point in time, I could hear just non-stop chatter, and it was voices, and they were saying stuff. None of it made sense. It was just like almost like 1,000 people talking at one time, but you cannot understand what they are saying. And this was going on. I was having all kinds of issues. And that's when I kind of was like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this. And even though I had, I was like, okay, this is going on, I had looked it up. And of course, with the new age, they tell you like, oh, that's part of, what did they tell me? they told it like it was something like that's part of the process. Like your body has to realign with the energy and this and that. And I'm like, no, I'm starting to think I'm crazy. Like this is not good energy. And so I ended up just like stopping. And even though I stopped, the voice, like the chatter that I couldn't, like that I heard constant and all of that finally stopped. But then, like, I had this fear that had came over me, and this fear was like a fear, like I don't know how to explain it except for imagine yourself like someone is literally trying to like murder you and they're chasing you right now. It was that type of fear. And it was like the fear of something was watching me, but like in my house, I had an alarm system. I had, my doors would be locked. I got so, this fear was so crazy that it just took over to where like I would not, luckily at this time I lived by myself, but like I would not close the bathroom door when I took a shower. Like I had to keep the door open. Why? I don't know. Cause like that was going to save me or something. But like in my mind, I had to do that. And this fear was just always feeling like something was watching me and something was just right there, but it wasn't there. At least with the naked eye. 100%, I'm pretty sure a demon was right there, but like I couldn't see it, but I could feel it and I could sense it. And so I just, kept on trying to do things that would remedy it. Use your crystal, sage yourself, do all this, use your incense and all of this, but it was not taking the fear away. And finally, like, really what happened is like one day I was at work and I had gotten into this side of aliens um in the new age. I kind of went down that rabbit hole of aliens. And the one thing that saved me when I was in the new age is that, a lot of times they'll either introduce like um evolution, like you emerged from whatever, a monkey, an amoeba, I don't know, a puddle, whatever they want to tell you. And then the other side would be like Mother Earth and Mother Gaia and all of this. And people go the atheist route and stuff like that. And so for me, even though I was in the new age, I could not break the knowing deep down that God was real and there was a God. I didn't know who God was. I didn't know about God, but I knew that God was real. And there was nothing that you were going to tell me otherwise. You couldn't convince me that, evolution was real. You couldn't convince me that there was no God because every time I would think about our bodies and how intricately detailed our bodies are and how they function, I was like, somebody had to be a mastermind in order to do this. You could not just magically appear. And so, and definitely you couldn't just morph from like, a lizard or whatever, an amoeba or something. I'm like, that's nonsense. So basically, I always held on to that. And so even when I got into the aliens and stuff, I didn't believe like, the aliens were another life form, that we came from other planets, none of that. I just could never grasp that. And but I did believe that aliens were real. I did believe that they appeared and stuff, and I did believe that people saw them. I believed that part. And so one day I was sitting at work and I ended up uh on my YouTube. I used to listen to YouTube like all the time at work, and on my YouTube, all I had was frequencies and like secular music. One day, this video pops up, and I will say this. Actually, the first video that popped up was a video on cults, and it was like the five biggest cults. And I turned it on because I'm like, ooh, this will be interesting. And it named the religion that I grew up in as a cult, and that was the first time I'd ever heard it called that. And the lady was like a psychotherapist, and she studied cults. She was like a well-versed lady in this, and she broke it down like what makes a religion or just a cult in general a cult, like the different things that have to be within that organization or whatever, or religion, to actually be labeled as a cult. And it hit all the points. And I was like, literally that moment, I just, I said it out loud at work and I had headphones on and I'm like, my mom's in a cult. And then I realized like it wasn't internal and I said it out loud and I'm like, oh, nobody heard me. And that really shook me. And then I got to the point where I was like, how do I, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Am I supposed to tell her, or what do I do? And then it was just kind of like, I don't know what to do. And then I got, really worried, because it was like, oh, if that religion that I grew up knowing isn't real, then what is? What am I supposed to do? And so the next video that I came across was a man speaking about aliens, and he was talking about how people had been abducted, and they'd interviewed like 200, 300 people. And everybody who had these encounters said that the only way they got it to stop was when they called out the name Jesus. And that right there just kind of like, what? And then he goes, has it ever occurred to you that the aliens are demons? And the moment that he said that, it was like my whole world broke. Bulb just went on, and I was like, aliens are demons. And after that, I heard one other thing that he said as it was ending, and he said, Satan hates you so much. He does not care how you die, whether it's drug overdose, whether it is, a car accident, whether it's suicide, whether it's, natural causes. All he cares about is that you die without knowing the truth, and you die without Jesus. And right then and there, I instantly got angry, and I said to myself, I am not going to willingly walk into hell. And I said, I thought to myself, I don't know what I'm supposed to do or how this happened, but I'm not going to hell. I'm just not walking in there because I just decided I didn't care. And so from there, that's when God stepped in, and he started to use YouTube. So it's funny when I hear people and they're like, oh, well, God doesn't use this, or God doesn't do that. I'm like, you have no idea. God will do whatever he wants to do, and he'll use whatever he wants to use if he deems that it's going to help you, or it's the way that it's going to, if it's going to pull you into him. And so he used YouTube. And basically, I spent an entire year studying my opponent. I wanted to know who Satan was. I wanted to know how he operated. And I'm not saying, read the Satanic Bible or something like that. I didn't do that. But I studied like the demons, principalities, what they were. Why did he hate me so much? Once I realized, okay, this is serious and he's real, I was like, there is an end game to this, and now I need to know the end game. And that's when God put a sermon in front of me. I had never listened to a sermon, never went, I'm not into the church thing. He put a sermon in front of me, and it was like curiosity killed the cat. I clicked on it and I listened, and I was hooked. And that was the moment that I was like, okay, I need Jesus. Okay. And so then my next thing was, how do I get Jesus? And so I started on this path, and mind you, now the devil is just throwing stuff at me, and all kinds of stuff is going on, when I'm still like, I got to find this Jesus. And I remember I had gotten to the point one night where I'd listened to the sermon, and the pastor said, he told his own life story. And this is why your testimony it is a superpower, and it is a weapon. He told his testimony about how he was in the club drunk. He had been running from the Holy Spirit telling him that he was to be a preacher. The Holy Spirit comes to him in the club. He's sitting at the bar drunk and tells him, get up and leave. The minute that he leaves, he becomes sober. He goes home. He dumps all of his stuff. He turns his whole entire life around and becomes a preacher. And I'm like, and he starts preaching on, all you gotta do is ask. And I'm like, really? So this one night, I am like, I came off of like work. It was the weekend. I'm sitting there. I had been like smoking, drinking, whatever. It gets to like midnight, and I just was like, it just dawned on me. And I just was like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of all of this. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to tell God, like, I'm going to be like, if you're real, just do whatever. So I remember I went into my room, and it was like midnight, so it was dark. And I got on my hands and knees and I just said, I am tired of this. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be like this. I was like, I just am done. And the next thing I said was, if you heal me and you take all of this from me, like I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to smoke. I don't want to do any of this. You take this from me. I said, I promise you, I will never turn back and I will never not follow you. And so I remember, in the new age, they tell you like, oh, there's some miracle's going to happen or something. Well, like nothing happened. So, I'm waiting for, I don't know, like the sky to open, a dove to come through. I don't know. I'm waiting for something and nothing happened. But I remember immediately I had this release of where I was just like sobbing, and it was like everything was releasing out of me. And then I just remember I felt a peace and I went to bed, and that was the start of it. And like, there was nothing special. He didn't tell me anything. It was just like from there, it just started to happen where he just kept using YouTube. So I realized that, like, with practicing witchcraft and being in organized religion, having generational witchcraft, to, practicing in the new age. Oh, not to mention in my life, I had, went through the ceremony and became an Eastern Star, which is the women version of Freemasonry. So I was one of those too. So there was so many different things and doors that I'd opened, where it got down to the point where I realized I need to do a deliverance and shut these doors. And so I ended up calling someone, because in my area they didn't have anyone or anything. And so I ended up calling, and it was somebody in like way in Florida. And I said, do I have to come there? And they were like, no, we can do it, over Zoom, over the phone, whatever. I said, okay. And then at the end, they're like, and we would like a donation of this is why I don't know why I still remember the price. It was like $467. And I'm just like, what? And I very politely was like, okay, well, thank you so much. And I remember turning off my phone, putting it down, and I just said, I'm not paying for Jesus. And at that moment, I went, like, my computer was right there. I just typed in deliverance, and this entire like manual popped up, and it was like a 30-page manual. And I immediately printed it out and I said, I'm going to do this. And I waited until, like, I made a specific day. It was on Saturday, and I sat down and I just started reading this deliverance, and it took you through steps. So it took you like through reading scriptures, praying on the armor of God, and then it took you through um, forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big one. And so I sat down with a notebook, and like from the age of 5 on, I wrote down anybody and everybody I could think of that, I felt did something wrong to me. And then I just, said, Jesus, I forgive so and so for this. And even after I did it in this moment, like months later, he would bring somebody's name to me, and then I would just do it then, like, oh, I forgive them too for whatever they did. So I went through that, and then I went through the deliverance, and I just started renouncing the things that I did, breaking off stuff. And when I got done, I felt amazing. But one problem, I didn't realize that once, you do all of that, you need to fill yourself with the word of God. So I did the deliverance and then just went about my merry way. And like about a month in, everything was going crazy. And that very scripture that says, when you sweep your house, they come back and bring 7 more. Well, they brought the whole family. And so I ended up doing it again. And this time, God had put a video in front of me that said, you need to read the Bible, you need to pray, you need to be worshiping. And so that's what I did. After that, the second time, I just started, just anything that had to do with God, I was into it. And I started, I made sure that I got rid of everything out of my house. I had thrown everything out. And I spent a year alone with God. So I did not go to a church at that time. I spent an entire year of just me and God, and him really just guiding me and just like learning who he was. And then it got to a point where he was like, now go to church. And so he directed me to the right church, and I started, um, going to church because he knew that by that time in me, I really wanted to be around like-minded people that I could share these really cool experiences that I was having when I couldn't really do that with my family, or like the friends that I used to have because I'd pretty much given up everything. Like when I chose Jesus and that was it. And like everyone else was gone. So when I said I was alone, it was like me and Jesus and that was it. And so, but through this, like I could just see the transformation and really, just saying those words that night, instantly I was healed from the trauma and all of that. Like none of that was there anymore. And while you're in it, sometimes you don't really notice it because you're going through it. But it wasn't until I looked back where I was like, I was instantly healed. He instantly did that. Like he instantly stopped me from the different things, like the drinking thing. Boom. Like when there was one day that he said, "This is your last drink." And I said, "Okay." Never again did I ever touch it. And still to this day, and we're going on 8 years. I have no desire to drink alcohol. Like when I said he took it, he took it. And so it was just like instantly I just felt like he just started like changing me completely and changing me into the person who he wanted me to be. And it's been a journey of going on 8 years, but like it's like he cleansed me and then he started to mold me and refine me to get to where I am now. And so it's been an awesome, awesome journey. And I kept my promise and that covenant that I made with him that night where I said if he healed me, I would never turn back. I have never have. I have always been like, if people were to ask me, I would say like I owe him my life, literally. And so once he showed me he was real and who he was, I've had no want to ever not live to be with him. Like he literally completely changed my life and my life is amazing. So I feel like there was no reason to ever look back and say, I miss this or I miss that. I don't miss any part of it at all. And if there was something that I could say to someone else who like has went through, whether it's, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, food addiction, gambling, it doesn't matter. Like Satan has an addiction for everything that he can suck you in, or whether you've been in dabbling in witchcraft, you got into the new age, you went down the wrong route in the wrong religion, you're addicted to porn, whatever it is, you're never too far gone. Like literally he is waiting with the door wide open and he just is waiting for you to say, please come here, get me, I'm ready. That's all he's waiting for. Nothing else. There's nothing special you have to do. You don't have to perfect yourself or present yourself and you have it all together. Like he wants you when you are broke down, broken, like beat up. That's what he wants. He doesn't need you to be, healed. He doesn't need you to have went to therapy. He doesn't need any of that. He wants you where you are. Like once you understand that, like he wants you where you are. And once you allow him to come into your life, he will do everything that you need. It's a matter of having a relationship. And that was the thing that I had to learn was that it's not about religion. It's about building a relationship. And I think that's why he had me not go to church for the first year, was so that I could build this relationship with him so that I could understand that that's what he wants. It's not me sitting in church every Sunday. You go there for companionship with other people and to get encouraged by each other and to hear the word of God. But it's that relationship that you build with him is what is going to root you in your faith. And so that would be probably the thing that I would tell someone is like, you need to sit down and build the relationship with them. And once you do, it's an amazing, amazing relationship. And what's crazy is all of the gifts that I thought I had in the new age, he showed me that I had actual gifts that he had already given me and that they were for his kingdom. And so I didn't have to give up a lot of things, but he did show me how to use them and what they're for. So that was a plus too. And then he also just kind of showed me what what he has for my life and what he wants me to do. And that's why I'm here telling my testimony, because this was one of the things that he told me that he wanted me to do, was to share my testimony, because your testimony is a superpower and it's a weapon, and it is the one thing that can break the darkness, and it's the one thing that can help someone. Because if you see someone else when going through the things that you've went through, or the things that you're going through, and you see how their life has changed, then it gives you hope to know that he wants to do the same thing for you. There's nothing special about me. It's just I love Jesus and he loved me right back. And that is all there is to it. So, Father God, just thank you for allowing me to be here today and to share this testimony. I just really pray that my testimony is used to help anyone who is at the stage of thinking that you don't care, don't love them, don't know how to get to you. Let this testimony be a light and an example as to all that they need to simply do. All they have to do is call out to you. You are waiting patiently, waiting for them to just give you the yes. That is all it is, and there's nothing special to it, God. So I just pray that each and every person who hears this, who is wanting to meet you, wanting to know you, who's wanting to change their lives, who's wanting to have something different, even if you don't know if Jesus is the right way, what could it hurt? That's how you got me. I made that decision that I said, you know what? I've tried everything else and everything has failed. Why not give you a try? And there you came to give me life. You breathed life back into me. And I pray that this breathes life into someone else, that it gives them the courage to come to you, Jesus, and to say yes. Because once they do, you take over, and it is absolutely amazing to serve and love you and to have a relationship with you. You fill the void that nothing in this world, material or a person, could ever fill. That void, and you also start to heal. And you change us from the inside out. And so I just pray that each and every person is bold enough through this prayer, that your spirit is resting on them, and it just gives them that little bit of a push that they need to just say yes to you. And I pray that once they do, the bondage starts to break, the strongholds start to just fall down, and that your Holy Spirit surrounds them and just pushes in your glorious light, Jesus. In your name I pray. Amen.